A week after my son Jamal's wedding, my daughter-in-law, Keisha, showed up at my door with a notary. She said she was there to help me out with the inheritance paperwork. Right then, with that fake smile plastered on her face, I realized something. After 35 years raising my son on my own, after every sacrifice I'd made, every dream I'd swallowed to give him a better life, all she saw in me was an opportunity. She had no idea that, for the past 3 months, while she'd been playing the perfect daughter-in-law, I'd been keeping quiet, watching, planning, and making decisions she never thought I'd be capable of making. 'Cause one thing I've learned in this life, anyone who underestimates a mother who's already lost everything always regrets it. Before we go any further, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button to help me out. And drop a comment down below letting me know where you're watching from. I love knowing where you guys are. Now, let me tell you how this whole thing started, 'cause I've got a lot I need to get off my chest. My name's Diane, I'm 62 years old, and this story happened last summer, back in June 2024. I was in my kitchen in Atlanta fixing Sunday dinner when everything started falling apart. You know that moment when you're doing something simple, like peeling potatoes, and suddenly you realize your whole life's about to change. That's exactly what it was like. My husband Marcos had passed away 2 years earlier from a massive heart attack, leaving me alone in that house that was way too big, with way too many memories and a will I was still trying to wrap my head around. He'd been a smart businessman, had invested in real estate his whole life, and left me way more than I'd ever imagined. The house, 2 rental properties downtown, and a bank account that gave me security. But right then, peeling those potatoes, I had no clue that all of that was going to become the center of a war. Jamal's my only son, my baby. I had him when I was 27 after 3 miscarriages that nearly broke me. When he was born, healthy and screaming at the top of his lungs, I swore I'd give him everything I never had, and I did. I paid for private school by sacrificing my clothes, my nights out, my dreams. I worked as a nurse pulling 3 shifts when Marcus was getting his business off the ground and money was tight. I watched my son grow up, graduate with a degree in business administration, land a good job at a logistics company. He'd always been such a sweet boy, so thoughtful, called me every single day to check on me. Until he met Keisha, that's when everything changed, but in such a subtle way that it took me a while to catch on. They met at a networking event at her job. Keisha worked as a marketing manager, always impeccable, always with that smile that showed every tooth but never quite reached her eyes. The first time Jamal brought her over for dinner, I tried to like her. I swear I tried. She showed up with an expensive bouquet of flowers, complimented my decor, said she loved the cozy vibe of my house. But there was something there, you know? Something about the way she looked at the pictures on the wall, how her eyes lingered just a bit too long on things, on Marcus's antique clock, on the china cabinet in the living room, on the solid wood furniture. It was like she was taking a mental inventory. I even mentioned it to my sister Lorraine afterwards, but she said I was being paranoid, that it was just typical mother-in-law jealousy. Maybe I would have believed that if it weren't for what happened next. Over the next 3 months, between the engagement and the wedding, Keisha became a constant presence. She'd come over to keep me company on weekends, always bringing something, a cake, some wine, flowers. She'd say she wanted to get to know me better, that she'd never had a mother figure in her life, and that I was a blessing. I wanted to believe it. God knows I wanted to. But I started noticing weird things. She asked way too many questions about Marcus's properties, about the will, about how I was handling all that responsibility on my own. She'd say it must be hard managing everything at my age, that I deserved to rest, to enjoy life, And always, she'd wrap up these conversations by suggesting that Jamal could help me out, that he understood finances, that it'd be good for me to pass the torch while I was still lucid and healthy. That started bothering me in a way I couldn't quite explain. Until the day I overheard a conversation that wasn't meant for me. It was on a Saturday afternoon, 2 weeks before the wedding. Keisha had come over for lunch with Jamal, and I was in the kitchen washing dishes. They thought I couldn't hear them from the living room. But the acoustics in this old house are tricky. Sound travels through the hallways in a way that lets you catch bits of conversation without meaning to. I heard her voice, low but firm. "Baby, you need to have a serious talk with her about putting those properties in your name. She's getting old, and if something happens, just imagine the headache with probate taxes and all that red tape." My stomach turned. I slowly dried my hands on the dish towel, trying to process what I'd just heard. Jamal's voice came next, lower, hesitant. "I don't know, Keisha. My mom's still young, she's doing fine. Feels weird bringing this up right now." I heard her sigh, impatient. "Jamal, it's not about her being sick. It's about being smart. It's about protecting the family assets, our family. Once we're married, these things are gonna affect us too. You don't want everything your father built getting lost in fees and legal battles, do you?" I stood there frozen, that dish towel in my hand, feeling my heart pound so hard I thought they'd hear it from the living room. Jamal didn't say anything back, and that silence hurt more than any words could have. Was he actually considering it? Was my son, the one I'd raised on my own through so many struggles, who I'd held when he had chickenpox, who I'd driven to every basketball game in school, was he really sitting there thinking about how to take away what his father had left me? I took a deep breath and walked back into the living room like nothing had happened, with a forced smile and fresh coffee. Keisha looked at me with that little smile of hers and said, "Auntie Diane, lunch was amazing. You cook so well. I bet Uncle Marcus loved your cooking." Auntie Diane, she always called me that, but that day it sounded fake, manipulative. I just nodded and changed the subject, but something had shifted inside me. A door had closed. That night, after they left, I sat on the living room couch until late, looking at the photos of Marcos scattered around the house. We'd built everything together. Every property we bought was with sweat, planning, sacrifice. He always used to say, "Diane, this is for you and Jamal, so you guys have security when I'm not here anymore." And now, less than 2 years after he was gone, someone who barely knew our story was trying to get her hands on it? I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly what Keisha was doing. She didn't want to help me. She wanted me to hand everything over on a silver platter, to sign papers that would leave me with nothing, dependent on their goodwill. And worst of all, she was using my son as a tool. That filled me with a rage I hadn't felt in a long time, a cold, calculated rage. But I wasn't gonna blow up, wasn't gonna confront them. I was gonna do this differently. The following Monday, I called Marcus's lawyer, Dr. Thompson, a black man in his 70s who'd known our family for decades. I scheduled a discreet meeting, didn't tell anyone. When I sat down across from him in that office full of law books and the smell of old leather, I poured everything out. Told him about Keisha, about the questions, about the conversation I'd overheard. He looked at me over his reading glasses and said something I'll never forget. "Diane, you're a smart woman. Marcus always said so. And smart women protect what's theirs before someone tries to take it." We spent the next 2 hours going over my will, my properties, my rights. He explained every detail, every possibility, every way to protect myself. When I walked out of there, I had a plan, and for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. Keisha could keep on smiling. Jamal could keep on staying silent. I was gonna let them think they'd fooled me until the right time came. The wedding happened on a sunny Saturday afternoon at an elegant venue that Keisha's family insisted on paying for. I wore a navy blue dress, polite smile on my face, greeting people I barely knew. Keisha's mother, Vanessa, a tall woman dripping in jewelry, hugged me with that kind of over-the-top affection that fake people love to put on display in public. "Diane, what a joy to have our families coming together," she said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. But when she let go of me, her eyes swept over my pearl necklace, my grandmother's heirloom, with that same look I'd seen on Keisha, calculating, appraising. Right then I understood something. Keisha hadn't come up with this on her own. This came from upbringing. That whole family had sniffed out Marcus's estate and decided it was theirs now. During the ceremony, I watched my son standing at the altar. Jamal looked handsome in his gray suit, nervous, running his hand through his hair the way he'd done since he was little whenever he got anxious. And for just a second, just 1 second, our eyes met. I saw something there, guilt, doubt, I don't know. But he looked away way too fast. That's when it really hit me. My son knew. Maybe not everything, maybe not the details, but he knew Keisha had plans, and he'd chosen to stay quiet. That broke my heart in a way that not even Marcus's death had broken it. 'Cause losing a husband to illness is one thing, but losing a son to greed, that's a whole different story. I wiped away a tear that kept threatening to fall and smiled when they kissed. Applause, photos, hugs. I played my part perfectly. Their honeymoon was a week in the Caribbean, and during those 7 days, I worked like crazy. I went back to Dr. Thompson's office 3 times. We created an irrevocable trust for the properties, meaning they couldn't be touched anymore, no matter what happened. I put in specific clauses. Jamal would only receive the full inheritance at age 40, and only if he met certain conditions. Until then, he'd get a fixed allowance from the rental income, enough to live comfortably, but nothing that gave him total control. I also named Lorraine, my sister, as co-trustee. If anything happened to me, she'd be the one managing everything, not Jamal, not while he was married to that woman. And most importantly, I created a separate document, a sealed letter that would only be opened in case of any attempt at contestation or manipulation. In that letter, I detailed everything: the conversations, the insinuations, the attempts to convince me to pass the torch. I'd even recorded some conversations on my phone in the weeks before, whenever Keisha came over to keep me company. Dr. Thompson looked at me and said, "Diane, you're declaring war?" I answered, "No, I'm defending myself from a war that's already started." When Jamal and Keisha got back from their honeymoon, tanned and smiling in the photos they posted on Instagram, I was ready. They came over for dinner the first Sunday back, and I made Jamal's favorite dish, roasted chicken with okra and rice, the way his father loved it. Keisha ate very little, spent half the time on her phone, but praised everything with that fake enthusiasm she always had. That's when she wiped her mouth with her napkin and said, with a smile that made my stomach turn, "Auntie Diane, we need to schedule a serious conversation with you. Now that Jamal and I are married, we've been thinking about helping you out with some things around the house. It must be so exhausting taking care of everything on your own." Jamal avoided my gaze. Again, I took a deep breath and smiled. "That's so sweet of you, but, I'm managing just fine. Those weeks while you guys were traveling actually gave me time to get some things organized." Keisha tilted her head, curious. "What kind of things?" I got up to get dessert and said, casually, "Oh, boring grown-up stuff, paperwork, that kind of thing." But while I was cutting the cake in the kitchen, my hands were shaking because I knew what was coming next. and they had no idea. The bomb dropped on a Wednesday, exactly 6 days after that dinner. I was watering the plants on the porch when I saw Jamal's car pull up in front of the house at 2 in the afternoon during work hours. My heart sank. He never left work in the middle of the day. When he got out of the car, Keisha came with him, and from the looks on both their faces, I knew. Someone had told them. I don't know who, I don't know how. But they knew I'd been making changes. Jamal came up the porch steps with that expression I'd known since he was a kid. That mix of contained anger and disappointment. "Mom, we need to talk now." His voice came out harder than I expected. Keisha stood there beside him, arms crossed, with that look of someone savoring a moment of victory. I set down the watering can and invited them in, faking a calm I didn't feel. We sat down in the living room, and it was Keisha who started. Of course it was. "Auntie Diane, we heard you've been making some changes to the will, talking to lawyers behind our backs." She wasn't even trying to hide her irritation now. The tone was accusatory, like I'd committed some crime. I looked at Jamal, waiting for him to say something, to defend me, to at least ask for my side of the story, but he just sat there, staring at the floor. That's when I exploded, not by yelling, but with an icy rage that took over me. "Keisha, these properties are mine. The will is mine, and I don't need anyone's permission to do whatever I want with what's mine." She laughed. She actually laughed, that mocking little laugh that made me want to get up and kick her out right then and there. "You don't get it, do you? When Jamal got married, these things affect us too. It's family assets. You can't be this selfish." Selfish? That word echoed through the room like a slap. I looked at my son, waiting, silently begging him to say something, and finally he spoke, but it wasn't what I wanted to hear. "Mom, why'd you do this without talking to us? Keisha's right. We just wanted to help. Why are you acting like we're the enemy?" His voice shook a little at the end, and I could see he actually believed it, that he'd been convinced I was the villain in this story. I took a deep breath and decided it was time to lay all the cards on the table. "Jamal, sit here and listen to me. I heard you two talking before the wedding. I heard her convincing you to get me to transfer the properties into your name. I heard her say, 'I'm old, that I can't handle things anymore.' And you know what hurt the most? It was you staying quiet. It was you not defending me." The silence that fell was deafening. Jamal went pale, looked at Keisha, then at me. "Mom, it's not like that." "It's exactly like that." I cut him off. "And I'm not going to sit here watching you try to take away what your father and I built our whole lives. So yes, I protected what's mine. I created a trust. The properties are going to keep generating income. You're going to keep getting your share, but nobody's going to be able to touch the principal until you're 40. And you know why? Because I don't trust her." I pointed at Keisha, who was now standing, red with rage. "You're a bitter, paranoid old woman," she screamed. We were just trying to help and you turn it into some conspiracy." I stood up too, and for the first time in months, I felt like I had control of the situation. If you were just trying to help, why were all the conversations about getting me to sign papers? Why didn't you ever ask if I was okay, if I needed company, if I missed Marcos? Why was it always about money, properties, inheritance? Keisha opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out, because she knew I was right, and Jamal knew it too. They left, slamming the door behind them. I stood there in the empty living room, shaking, with tears running down my face that I couldn't hold back anymore. But they weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of anger, of relief, of pain. I grabbed my phone and called Lorraine. "They know," was all I could manage to say. She sighed on the other end of the line. "And now what?" I wiped my face and looked out the window, watching their car disappear around the corner. Now we wait. Because if I know Keisha like I think I do, she's not going to give up easy. She's going to try something else. Lorraine was quiet for a moment. Diane, do you think Jamal's completely lost? That question broke me, because I didn't know the answer. I didn't know who my son was anymore. I don't know, Lorraine, but I'm going to find out. I hung up the phone and stood there in the middle of the living room, feeling the weight of everything. And that's when I had this strange feeling that this was far from over, far from it. 2 weeks of absolute silence went by. Jamal didn't call, didn't text, nothing. It was like I'd ceased to exist for him. Each day that passed without word hurt more, a dull ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. I'd pick up the phone 1,000 times to call, but I'd freeze. What was I gonna say? Sorry for protecting what's mine. No, I wasn't gonna apologize, but the loneliness was heavy. The house was way too quiet, and I'd catch myself staring at pictures of little Jamal on the wall, trying to figure out where I went wrong. It was Lorraine who kept my head straight during those weeks. She'd come by every day after work, bring food, stay talking with me until late. You didn't do anything wrong, Diane, she'd repeat. You just protected yourself, and if Jamal can't see that now, he will eventually. I wanted to believe it. God knows I wanted to. But then came that Thursday morning that changed everything. I was having coffee, still in my robe, when the doorbell rang. I looked through the people and felt my blood run cold. It was Keisha, alone. I hesitated for a second, but ended up opening the door. She looked different. No perfect makeup, hair pulled back carelessly, eyes red like she'd been crying. Auntie Diane, please, I need to talk to you. Her voice came out low, almost a whisper. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but there was something in that look, a vulnerability I'd never seen before. I stepped aside to let her in. We sat in the kitchen, and I poured coffee out of pure reflex and that automatic ritual of hospitality my mother taught me. Keisha held the cup with both hands, staring at the dark liquid like she was looking for courage in there. I came to apologize, she said finally. For real. I stayed quiet, waiting, 'cause I wasn't going to accept some easy apology. She took a deep breath and continued. When I met Jamal, I saw an opportunity. I'm not gonna lie. I grew up poor. My mom worked her whole life cleaning houses for rich people, and I swore I'd be different, that I'd have security. And when I found out his family had properties, money, I let that poison everything. Tears started running down her face, and for the first time, they seemed genuine. But Jamal, he's a good man, and I'm losing him because of my greed. He barely talks to me since that fight. He sleeps on the couch. He looks at me like he doesn't recognize me anymore. My heart clenched, but I couldn't let my guard down yet. And what did you come here looking for, Keisha? My blessing, my forgiveness, or a way to fix things to save your marriage? She looked at me with those red eyes and said something that caught me completely off guard. I came to tell you the truth, a truth Jamal doesn't know, and it's gonna change everything. I felt my stomach turn. What truth? Keisha wiped her face with the back of her hand and let the words out like she was dropping a weight. My mother, Vanessa, she knew Marcos a long time ago, before you two got married. The world stopped. I stared at her, trying to process what I'd just heard. What are you trying to say? My voice came out shaky. She swallowed hard. My mother worked at Marcus's parents' house in the 80s. She was a housekeeper there, and they had an affair that lasted years. I felt like the floor had disappeared from under my feet. Marcus and Vanessa, impossible. You're lying, I whispered. You're making this up to... I have proof, she cut me off, and she pulled her phone out of her purse, scrolled for a few seconds, and turned the screen toward me. It was an old photo, faded but clear enough. Young Marcus, maybe 25 years old, with his arm around a beautiful black woman with an afro, Vanessa, no doubt about it. They were smiling, happy, in a restaurant I recognized. It was the same place where Marcus proposed to me years later. My vision blurred. "Boy, when was this?" I managed to ask, even though I didn't want to know the answer. 1982, Keisha said quietly. 2 years before you guys got married. My mother, she was fired when Marcus's family found out. They said she was trying to take advantage of him, that she was a gold digger. She never got a decent job after that, and she swore that one day she'd get back what was rightfully hers. I looked at Keisha with growing horror. So this whole thing, from the beginning, was revenge. She nodded, tears falling harder now. My mother planned everything. She found out Marcus had died, that you'd been left with everything, and when I met Jamal by chance at that event, she saw the perfect opportunity. She convinced me it was justice, that his family owed us that I had to do whatever it took to get a piece of that estate. I felt nauseous. I got up from the chair, walked to the sink, gripped the edge. My husband had had an affair with my daughter-in-law's mother, the man who swore he only loved me, who built a life with me, had hidden this. And now, even dead, this secret was destroying everything. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked without turning around. Keisha's voice came weak behind me. "Because I really fell in love with Jamal, and I can't live with this anymore. He doesn't deserve to be part of my mother's crazy revenge scheme, and you don't deserve this either." I turned to her, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw a real person there, broken, remorseful, human. "What do you want me to do with this information, Keisha?" She stood up, grabbed her purse. "I don't know. I just thought you deserved to know the truth before it's too late." And she left, leaving me alone in the kitchen with that bomb that had just exploded in my life. I went 3 days without sleeping right after that conversation. I'd spend the nights awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece it all together. Marcos and Vanessa, an affair in the 80s. Was it true? Or was this just another one of Keisha's manipulations? I needed answers, but I didn't know where to start. That's when I remembered something. Marcus's older sister, Paulette, who lived in Charleston. She was around 70 now, but back then she was already an adult, worked with their father. If anyone knew about this story, it was her. I called on impulse, and when she answered with that raspy smoker's voice, I got straight to the point. "Paulette, I need to ask you something about Marcus, about his past." There was a long silence on the other end. "What do you want to know, Diane?" Her voice changed, got cautious. "Did he have an affair with a housekeeper at your parents' house? A woman named Vanessa?" The silence that followed gave me the answer before she even spoke. "Diane, who told you that?" My heart sank, so it was true then. "Doesn't matter who told me. Is it true?" Paulette sighed deeply, and I heard her light a cigarette on the other end. "It was more than an affair, Diane. Marcus was crazy about that woman, wanted to marry her. But you know how it was back then, how our father was. He was never gonna accept his son marrying the housekeeper. He fired her, threatened her, paid her to disappear. Marcus was devastated for months. I felt the tears burn my eyes. And he never told me. In all those years of marriage, he never. Because he loved you, Diane," Paulette interrupted me. "For real. He got over that. You were the love of his life. I saw it. But that story, he was ashamed. Ashamed of how the family treated her. Ashamed he wasn't man enough to stand up to his father. I hung up the phone soon after, with more questions than answers. Did Marcos love me? Or was I the consolation prize? The safe choice after the forbidden passion. The following Saturday, something happened that I didn't expect. The doorbell rang again, but this time it was 3 people: Jamal, Keisha, and Vanessa. My son had an expression on his face I'd never seen before. Keisha looked terrified. And Vanessa had that look I'd seen in the old photo. Hard, resentful, full of hurts that decades hadn't been able to erase. I let them in, and we sat in the living room. The same living room where Marcus and I had watched TV for 30 years, where we celebrated birthdays, where we laughed and cried together. Now it felt like a courtroom. Jamal was the first to speak, and his voice came out cold like I'd never heard it. Mom, Keisha told me everything about Grandpa and Vanessa, about how the family humiliated her. I looked at Vanessa, who stared at me with pure hatred. You stole the life that should have been mine, she spat the words out. Marcus was going to marry me. We were going to have a life together. But that racist, prejudiced family took everything from me. And you ended up with everything that was supposed to be mine. Something exploded inside me. I got up from the chair, and for the first time in months, I felt real anger. That kind of anger that cleanses, that sets you free. You want to blame someone, oh Vanessa. Blame Marcus's father. Blame the racist system that didn't let you guys be together. Blame Marcus himself for not having the guts to stand up to his family. But don't come throwing this on me. I didn't know anything about it. And I worked. I fought. I built that life together with him. You have no right to anything that's mine. Vanessa got up too, was coming toward me, but Jamal held her back. That's when I said what needed to be said, what had been stuck in my throat for weeks. And you, Jamal, my son, do you really believe I owe this woman something, that I have to pay for the mistakes of people who are already dead? Are you really on her side against me? Jamal looked at the floor, and I saw his tears fall. I don't know whose side I'm on anymore. Mom. That's when the impossible happened. The kitchen door opened and Dr. Thompson appeared, carrying an old leather briefcase. I'd asked him to come, asked him to bring something that I didn't even know existed until 3 days ago. Sorry to interrupt, he said in that deep, calm voice, but I think there's information here that all of you need to hear. Vanessa frowned. Who are you? I'm the family's lawyer, Dr. Thompson responded, opening the briefcase, and executor of Marcus's will. And recently, doing a complete review of the documents, I found something that Marcus himself left sealed, with specific instructions to only be opened if there was a dispute over the inheritance or if, and I quote, Vanessa ever tries to claim anything. The silence in the room was absolute. Dr. Thompson took out a yellowed envelope and opened it carefully. This is a letter from Marcus, dated 1995, 10 years after his marriage to Diane. He started reading, and my dead husband's voice filled that room. If this letter is being read, it means Vanessa has shown up trying to claim something from my life or my family, and I need to put the truth on record. Vanessa and I had a relationship when I was young, that's true, but she wasn't fired just because my father found out. She was fired because she stole my mother's jewelry, $3,000 in gold and diamonds. My father didn't want to call the police to avoid staining the family name, so he paid her to leave and stay quiet. I found this out years later. When my mother told me on her deathbed, I was devastated. Not because I'd lost Vanessa, but because I'd idealized her, had fought with my father over her, had almost destroyed my family for someone who deceived me. Diane never knew this because I was ashamed of being so blind. But I loved Diane with every piece of me. She was real when everything in my youth was an illusion. And if anyone tries to take from her what we built together, know this, they won't succeed. Because I protected her even after death. Marcus. The silence that fell was deafening. Vanessa went white, mouth open. "That's a lie," she screamed. "I never—" But Dr. Thompson pulled another document from the briefcase. "Here's the archived police report. Your name, your signature on the agreement not to prosecute in exchange for money and silence. All documented." Vanessa collapsed on the couch, face in her hands. Keisha looked at her mother in horror. "Mom, you lied to me." "About everything." And then she looked at me, tears streaming down. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." But I wasn't looking at Keisha. I was looking at Jamal, who had his hands on his head, crying. He came to me, knelt in front of me like he hadn't done since he was a child. "Mom, forgive me. I was an idiot. I let her get in my head. I doubted you. I put my hand on his face, wiped away his tears. "You're my son, Jamal. You always will be. But you've got a choice to make now. A choice about what kind of man you want to be." 3 months have passed since that day. Jamal filed for divorce from Keisha 2 weeks later. He comes to visit me every week now, and we're rebuilding slowly. It's not like it was before. It never will be. But it's real now. No lies, no illusions. Keisha moved to another state, and I heard she's in therapy. I hope she finds peace. Vanessa tried to sue, but her lawyer gave up when he saw the evidence. She disappeared too. As for me, I changed the will again. Jamal will get everything when I die, but under one condition, that he create a scholarship fund for young black people from low-income families in his father's name. Because Marcus wasn't perfect, nobody is. But he loved me. And he deserves to be remembered for the good he did, not for the mistakes of his past. This morning, I was watering the plants on the porch again, and the sun was beautiful, the air fresh. I looked out at the street and thought, I won. Not because I kept the money, not because I destroyed anyone, but because I protected what was mine, defended my dignity, and didn't let other people's greed turn me into a victim. And that, I realized in that moment with the sun on my face, is worth more than any inheritance, so much more. So that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Drop a comment down below with your thoughts. And if you enjoyed it, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. There's another amazing story popping up on your screen right now. Go check it out. See you in the next one.